Are you curious about bodies, pleasure, and possibilities? And what about curious about what others are up to on the planet when it comes to pleasure, sex, and play? Have you considered what pleasure can do for your life, your body, and your bank account? Do you know something magical, delightful, and out of this world orgasmic is not only possible for you, but totally available to you? If you're ready to be the magical, sexual, sexy beast you know you can be, and you just need the tools to get there, you're in the right place. Now, here's the host of The Pleasure Zone, sensual movement artist, relationship and sex alchemist, Milica Jelenic.
Welcome, my sweet pleasure seekers. This is a fun time of year. We're just entering fall for those of you who are listening to this broadcast live as it's being put out. It's beginning of September. I don't know if in your country, if you guys have the day off, but today's their day off, and it just gets you to kind of thinking about things and contemplating what's going on. I have a day off. I can sit and think. So on this day of sitting and thinking, I thought, why not talk about what is the center of relationships? What is at the center of your relationship? And I think we need to expand that to what is at the center of the relationship that you have with you. So why is this important? Well, one of the reasons is that when I'm working with people, especially in relationship, a lot of times that the focus of their relationship or the center of the relationship, which is what I would also say is the focus, is the need to be right. And so there's the right way to put the toilet paper on the roll. Why can't this person just put it the right way so that I can relax and have the toilet paper the right way? No, these things are not significant. And if they truly are significant to you, it's do or die if the toilet paper is not in the right place and your partner intentionally doesn't put the toilet paper in the right way, and it really is like death to you, two things to do. You're going to need some support and counseling or coaching because something's going on, that you are off track, that you're making toilet paper more important than anything else. And two, if it really is important and you can't let it go and shift it, it's time to let go of the relationship. So you can turn petty things into things that will destroy a relationship if you choose, and if that's actually what you want to invest in. So what we put at the center of our relationships are what we're investing in. So we're in about just over the 10th year of the pleasure zone. And so what I put at the center of the show is pleasure. And that doesn't always mean that it's like, now we're going to talk about masturbation and we're going to talk about penetration. Pleasure is very vast. And pleasure to me also includes where we're moving out of trauma. And as you start to move out of trauma, you can actually experience life in your body and have your body feel relaxed and at ease and enjoy and feel connected. So these are all very important aspects of pleasure. And so if we have certain things at the center of our relationship, like the pleasure zone, the center of the pleasure zone is pleasure. There's a zone. The center of it is pleasure. And you can look at yourself, like, what is the center of your life? What do you center your life around? Is it debt? Are you centering everything in your life around, how do I eliminate or eradicate the debt that I have? How do I get rid of it? So what we know philosophically, what we know energetically, and what has been proven scientifically is that what we put our energy on grows. So if the center of something is we're focusing on debt, or we're focusing on, our whole life is revolving around how do I eliminate debt, then what are you going to do? You're going to create more debt, because by the nature of it, it's the energy that you're creating is the word that has the most weight to it. So debt has a lot of weight to it, and it's going to create more of it. Now, if you were looking at it in a little bit of a different way, is like, how do I put at the center of my life, how do I put joy at the center of my life? And I think joy is a great one to center your life around, because it's not specific. And the reason why I say I like that is because when it's not specific, it can change for you. And it doesn't have to be like the thing that you center your life around is marigolds or something. Your whole life is dedicated to marigolds until there's some kind of marigold disease and all the marigolds in the world die. And then then you're devastated because everything that you'd put your energy and focus on is just devastated, dying and going into extinction. You're going to start to feel like you're going into extinction too, because everything you've put your focus on is actually collapsing. So I'm just using marigolds as an experience, as an example, because outside my window, I have all these like wildflowers and different things. So that's not saying that the world is getting rid of marigolds. For people who are like, OMG, she's saying that all the marigolds are going away. No, it's just an example. So on the pleasure zone, if you're brand new to this show, we all often talk about sex. We often talk about relationships. We often talk about history, the mystery, the psychology, even the spirituality, the energetics behind things. And today's no different. We're just looking at this from a relationship standpoint. And I know a lot of you, my listeners, who are avid listeners and have listened to a lot of shows, you love my kinky shows. I know that. And as much as I love talking kink as well, I also know there are fundamentals that we need to get under our belts before we get under our belts. So if you can get certain things as fundamentals in your life and you know what the center is, what you're centering on. So if you, for example, if you feel centered on your health is like your entire center of your life. Now, if your health starts to decline, you probably are going to start, even though you've been focusing on health, it might start to decline because the nature of the beast is that our bodies eventually die. I know that's a harsh reality, guys, but eventually these bodies die. Notice I didn't say it's our souls, it's our bodies, right? So our bodies eventually die. They just decay and fall apart and rot. And sometimes people just get them cremated, speed up the process. Some people compost their bodies and lots of ways to get rid of the body. So if the center of your life is going to be on your body, the chances are your body is going to start to fall apart and you'll end up getting slightly disappointed. So, but that's okay. Like that can be your experience. Absolutely. I've been watching in the last few years, I've been watching people go from like one trend to another trend. Like I saw the beginning of COVID, I saw all these people go cuckoo for you have to drink your, like I like watching these trends. It's like you got to drink your greens and you got to do your juice fast. Like I'm thinking of one person in particular, and it was like gangbusters for you've got to do this and you've got to, and this is the only way. And the same person went from being like hardcore vegan to in the last year and a half becoming hardcore meat eater and has swung the pendulum from one side to the other. And the righteousness of both views is so extreme that you can see that if this point of view wasn't working and like this protocol in their life wasn't working, the chances are this extreme other protocol is also not going to work. However, they're going to swing back and forth until they realize there's this whole gray area in the world. And this gray area is like where, there isn't the extreme left and the extreme right. There is something in the middle. And I think we all need to come to that place where that polarizing energy, those polarizing energies aren't pulling us apart. They aren't, polarizing energies are there to pull us apart. They're there to separate and divide. So if we can move away from that, we are going to be in a lot better position with ourselves and with our bodies and in relationship to others, because the polarizing energies are there to like invite you into going, this side is right or this side is right. And now they have to fight because the righteousness is so high. And then once you start to realize that it's actually probably neither of those, there's that saying, my way or your way, it's my truth or your truth or the truth. There's always that, right? So there's always more, way more than one perspective on things. Very polarizing, like the righteousness of one way or the righteousness of another way, the chances are that's not going to be extra sustainable for you, because as I gave that example of the person who's like super vegan for, for 15 years until about a year and a half ago, uh, and now is like a devoted meat eater and like telling everybody I was so wrong, you should eat meat, like definitely eat meat. It's like, wow, like, and they're on this rampage, like this is all they talk about, this is the center of their life. So until they find that that's wrong. And so then they have to keep on recentering themselves, because their centers, what they've been using to center themselves, is not actually a stable truth. So how do you find a stable truth for you? And to me, that's when it comes down to what are your beliefs and your morals. And your beliefs and your morals probably are, they probably haven't changed since you were little. I know that my beliefs and morals, although I might have gained a lot of information and seen things in a different way, I know that from when I was little, I've always had a sense of justice in my, like, what is just. And so kindness to others was always like key to me. And that was part of justice to me. If something is not kind, I'm not okay with it. And so that will bring me back to question, like, was that kind? Oh, that wasn't kind. If there's no kindness, where is the universe supporting that, or divine? Why would divine support something not kind? So is it kind? I also am a very firm believer in choice, and I always have been. And I fought for it when I was little, when people would tell me, well, you can't do that and you don't have a choice. And I'd be like, oh yeah, I have a choice. You just don't know what the choice is, but I know I have a choice. I know that um, probably by no fault of the adults around me, not my mom. My mom was like a staunch believer in choice. Other adults around me were not staunch believers in choice. It was their way or the highway. And that kind of authority can often bring in a lot of self-doubt and make you question your morals and values, right? So that can kind of bring you off the center. So when I can come back to the center of what do I know as truth for me, that doesn't mean it's truth for you. But if you know what your center is, what's true for you, and for me, that is, just the sense of justice, like what is fair. And so justice is not like, justice in my sense is different than maybe what you guys think of justice as well. So you got to think of, like, what is your thought on justice? My thought on justice is, what is kind here? What is the kindest thing you could possibly do in a scenario? Yeah. So doesn't mean that, you're going to necessarily go out and just kill people because you think you should, because they have different values than you. Some people would say that's justice. Some people would say and everybody's got their different ideas of like what's evil and what's good, and there's also all the gray areas in between. So my question is always like, what is this kind? Like, what is kind here? And that sense of like, so when, and also fighting for justice is like, I generally have always backed the underdog. And I know I backed the underdog because I seen myself do it in grade school. I backed the underdog all the time. Where other kids, were the bullies, I was the one stepping in for the underdog and standing up to the bullies. So, and I think I've passed on those values too. Not a fan of the bullies who tell you things, and bullying comes in so many ways. Oh, I could go on a rampage about that. But that is not a good center of a relationship at all, to have bullying at the center of your relationship. So seen it. I've seen parents bully their kids. I've seen kids bully other kids. I've seen teachers bully kids. I've seen the whole, and kids bully teachers. There's like bullying up right down in center, and social media is one of the most bullying places I have seen in the last 20 years. If you want to be bullied, go on social media. Your chances are, if you have any sense of feeling, or that you want to say something, you'll probably get bullied. The chances are high. So if you're putting bullying at the center of your relationship, the chances are you're going to find more of it. You're going to attract more of it, and you're going to, probably either end up fighting it or walking away, just going, wow, this is not worth the time or the effort, because these people cannot hear it, right? So that's a total side note. So my question, I'm going to bring it back, center it. What is the center of your relationship? And we haven't talked about like all the options. There are a lot of options to center your relationship around. And also, what are the benefits of certain things being the center of your relationship, and what are some of the deficits to that, right? So, you might have benefits to having money at the center of your relationship. It might help your finances grow, but then also you might find that you're taking away from other things like quality time with your family or your spiritual life or any of that. So it's you got to kind of see, like, what are the benefits and what are the deficits. So we're going to talk about some of those in the next segment. You're listening to The Pleasure Zone here on Inspired Choices Network, and we'll be right back after this commercial.
Are you secretly a voyeur, wondering what's going on in other people's sex lives? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual evolution? Are you interested in people who are pioneers of different sexual and pleasurable practices? Lean in now with Milica Jelenic, where she will entice you and your body to know your own pleasure zone. On the Pleasure Zone radio show with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life, and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for the Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
Are you a subject matter expert? Are you here to share your expertise with an audience waiting to hear from you in only the way you can deliver? Are you ready to have your voice amplified across the airwaves? Inspired Choices Network has a global radio platform streaming to millions of people across the world. Professionally produced and supported by an accomplished team every step of the way, you can broadcast from anywhere in the world, knowing your voice matters, and we ensure it is delivered with ease and efficiency. Eager to hear your message, the world awaits. Contact us today to become an Inspired Choices Network radio host. Email become a host at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
This is The Pleasure Zone with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic. To participate in the program today, join our live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email, info@milicajelenic.com. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back, my sweet pleasure seekers. Today we are talking about what is at the center of your relationship. And why are we talking about that? Well, as a sex and intimacy coach and as a holistic health practitioner, what I find is a lot of times I have people come in either with health issues, relationship issues, things going on in their life, where if we can often look at what they've been putting all their energy, focus, and attention on, then we can find out that this might actually be what has created some of the pain, discomfort, dis-ease in the body, and backtrack it and unhook it, I could say, maybe, but yeah, we switch the pattern and then are able to move forward in a new way with new insights and be able to have sustainable relationships. So if your focus of your relationship is, my partner is such an idiot, and that's all you ever think about is your need for your partner to be smarter, but then when they are smarter, you actually don't want to hear what they have to say. So you have this like vicious cycle where your partner's an idiot, but then all of a sudden they say something smart, but you don't want to hear it. So what the true center of that is like a lack of communication. So if you have a lack of communication, the thing that you would want to do is improve the way you communicate. And so what does that look like? I think for everybody it can be quite different depending on the language they're using, the intonations they're using, the energy behind the words, and being able to look at if the center of your universe was to bring you joy, which we talked about in the last segment, if we just really simplify it to what brings you joy, if a true joy, right? Sustainable, lasting joy, what brings you joy? Then if communicating is part of that, and we're going to flip it to kind communication, then it's going to be important to establish some of the language that your partner can hear and receive, and vice versa, what you can deliver and have your partner, receive, and what your partner can give you that you can receive. So language can be tricky, and not all words are right for all people. So there isn't like a one fix it for all. There are many times where a word, for example, oh, well, you're being silly. For example, if somebody said, oh, you're being silly, that might be really frustrating and annoying and triggering in a relationship for one person, but for the other person, that's just like, oh, you're being silly. And like they feel and they hear the intonation differently. And you could probably hear the intonation in my voice different, even though the truth of it is, it was probably delivered in a more neutral one of, oh, that's just being silly. And we hear these things and then we invent stories around them, right? So you think I'm being silly. That means you think I'm dumb. That means you think you don't want to be with me. It's like, whoa, where did that come from? Or the other would be like, oh, you're being silly. And then it turns into a playful conversation. But either way, you have put your own twist on it. And then you've established like now like the whatever your focus was on. So if your focus was on that I'm always hurt and there's a lack of communication, then your center of your relationship to you is going to be I'm always hurt. So you're going to find ways to make sure that you're always going to be hurt. I'm always abandoned. So you're going to find ways to make sure that you're always going to be abandoned because that's important to you. You've made that the most important thing. It's the center of the universe. So, probably in our limited thoughts, let's go really archaic for us. The center of our universe is the sun, according to what we think right now. But it's probably not true. And I'm almost certain that it's not true. So, but we'll just go like, okay, the center of this planetary system that has Earth in it is the sun, and everything revolves around the sun. Now, if we remove the sun, what would happen to the planets? They would have a different gravitational pull. They'd all go into chaos. Things would go crazy. We would probably all die. So the center, as the sun, keeps things moving and orderly and sensible. And yes, there's still change and there's still chaos, but there is this focus that you can keep going to that's like, okay, the center of the universe, the sun. We know that. So in relation, or we assume that because we're limited, but if we look at what is the center of your relationship, you could make it the sun if you want. Some people, like Zoroastrians, believe that God is the sun, and Ra as a sun god from Egyptian times. Lots of different cultures worship the sun as the center of the universe. So if you use that and that's what you rely on and you always go back to, okay, we can have the center of our lives be the sun. And every time we have an issue, we can go and we can look at the sun, and that can bring us back to our truth and who we are. So what I think is that when you know what the center is, you can go there yourself. So some people will center themselves to the Gaia, Earth, and they'll be very much focused on all things to do with being centered to the earth. And so then you might ground yourself, you might connect with the center of the earth, you might find solace in that and peace in that. And so anytime you might have something going on in your life, your go-to would be, I need to get grounded. And then you get grounded, and then you can actually come back into the relationship with a new approach. And if your partner happens to have the same belief system as you, then together you can actually bring your focus both, say, back on the earth, Mother Earth is your focus. Then you can both go, okay, let's just go and be with the earth and ask for guidance and advice, or just go and be in communion and feel at ease and at peace and connected, and then come back and have a discussion. So if you know what the center of your relationship is, you can always bring everything back to that. So if you're not sure what it is, you can pretty well establish that by looking at, what are you creating the most of? Is the center of your relationship? Sometimes, there's addiction. So the center of a relationship can always revolve around either the addict or the addiction, if both people are addicts. And if it is that often everything gets pulled into that, like the gravitational pull of the sun, all the planets are put into place. Well, in things like in a relationship where there's addiction, everything revolves around that, and it's like a centrifugal force that pulls everything in rather than like splaying it out. So more like a vacuum, it just sucks everything into it, and then everything is affected by, say, the addiction or the addict. And when the center of the relationship is anything to do with whether it's addiction as an illness or somebody's dying of cancer, and then the whole focus becomes on that, then you'll often find that is just not sustainable. There's only so long people can be in a relationship in those scenarios and have themselves feel enough at peace and ease that they can last in that, and or that they don't become sick themselves because they've been pulled into the vortex that is the addiction or the illness. And oftentimes you hear that the caregiver gets oftentimes the caregiver of somebody who's chronically ill will end up dying before the person who's chronically ill, because of the focus and the attention and the effort and all the work that's put towards the person who is chronically ill. That's more common than not. So what would you, when you think about it, what would create a sustainable relationship for you? What would offer you a sense of peace and joy if you had it at the center of your life? And then to further that, at the center of your relationship could be with a partner that's your lover, your spouse, could be with a friend, could be with your family. So what is the center? And it's really, really key to have something that centers you. So we were talking about before one of the other breaks, like, what if your center of your relationship is always on either financial gain or financial loss? Then, to the exclusion of everything else, you'll probably have those things show up, financial gain or financial loss, but you're going to miss out on a lot of other things. You're going to miss out on all the growth, say, like watching your children grow up if you have them, or you're going to miss out on connecting with your spouse, or you're going to miss out on a center that could be based on joy, whatever that is for you. And a lot of people at the center of their relationship, they'll say that they have common faith at the center of their relationship, and that can be true for a lot of people. I have seen it on a rare occasion where the center of the relationship is like faith-based, and they actually use it to bring themselves back to their center all the time. Whether it's like, trying to get your partner to change, but then you're like, wait a second, that's not fair. And it's unnecessary. Let's bring it back to the center, which is our faith. So instead of asking, say, your partner to change their personality or their traits, you're like, okay, you know what? I see you for who you are. And let's go put the energy back into our faith. For some people, they might be going to mosque or church, or they might be going to synagogue, or, whatever it happens to be that brings their faith back to them. So when they do that, they truly do that, and they don't just talk about it, where a lot of people just talk about it. When they truly do that and they bring it back to the truth that binds them, that relationship can be really sustainable. And the thing is, there's always going to be these external things like the money stuff and all these other things like health things. So then how do you continue to have a sustainable relationship when all these other things are so obviously, in a state of growth and decay at all times, just like our finances are in a state of growth and decay all the time. Money comes in, money goes out, growth and decay. Our bodies are always in a state of growth and decay. You can see that on the cellular level, where our bodies regenerate the cells 100% in 1 year, from the tip of our hair to the tips of our toes. Everything in between in 1 year gets regenerated. Like new cells get growing and old cells die off. So if we're always in a state of decay and growth, you need to find something to center your relationship that is sustainable and that is not necessarily going to die. I mean, it might change for you, your faith, your belief, your morals, your things that bring you joy. They may change over time, but a lot of times they're probably quite true to what you felt as a child. And I remember feeling like deep connection when I was a kid to faith. And so I loved going to church as a kid. Loved it. I didn't really understand what I was doing there, but it always felt like better when I would go. So for me, I don't have to go to the church that I necessarily grew up in, but like I could walk into other churches and feel just the same sense of peace and ease, or I could walk into congregations of different faiths and feel the same thing. So I haven't centered my faith on any particular religion. I've centered it on knowing that the divine has my back and vice versa. Like it's a symbiotic relationship. So, and I don't expect everybody to have that. And, lots of people are agnostic or atheists, and that's totally cool too. You probably have something else that centers your relationships. So if it's not, if you're not looking for something that brings you joy and that is sustainable, what else could you center your relationship on that can work for you, whether it's temporary, because everything's temporary anyways in this life. So what could you focus your relationship on that works for you? So we're going to look at some options when we come back. You're listening to The Pleasure Zone here on Inspired Choices Network, and we'll be right back after these messages.
Are you secretly a voyeur, wondering what's going on in other people's sex lives? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual evolution? Are you interested in people who are pioneers of different sexual and pleasurable practices? Lean in now with Milica Jelenic, where she will entice you and your body to know your own pleasure zone. On the Pleasure Zone radio show with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life, and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for The Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
Interested in masturbating for money, copulating for consciousness, and pleasuring on purpose? 21 Days of Sexual Magicism with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic is an exploration of tools, processes, and actions that you can use to create more for your life, your body, your money inflows, and so much more. Graduated learning for all levels of interest. Learn at your own pace via video classes or join the yearly live class. Take a peek at www.milicajelenic.com.
How wonderful would it be to carry your favorite Inspired Choices Network host with you throughout your day? Well, now you can. Inspired Choices Network now has its very own mobile app. Our free app offers live streaming shows, along with thousands of podcasts and TV episodes. Our shows cover a wide variety of topics. Whether you're waking up with us, carrying us through the day, and taking us to bed with you, we're always here for you to enjoy. We're easy to find. Just search for Inspired Choices Network in the Apple App Store or Google Play Store.
This is the Pleasure Zone with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic. To participate in the program today, join our live studio audience in our chat room at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email, info@milicajelenic.com. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back, my sweet pleasure seekers. Today we're talking about what is at the center of your relationship. Like, what have you put at the center of your relationship? I know a lot of people have stayed in a relationship for decades and decades. And when I ask them, do you love your partner? They're like, well, not really, but we're in it for the financially because we can't afford to live on our own. So what they've done is they put finances at the center of their relationship. And what happens is they'll end up spending money, creating debt, buying and selling houses to just try and pare down and then have some money in the bank. But then that money goes away because the investments aren't working. Because as long as they are in financial hardship of some sort, they're going to stay together because ultimately they actually would like to be together, but they're not functional. So they've had to create an excuse to be together. Isn't that cute? It's really funny. So if you have created the chaos of, I'm only with my partner because I have to be, because we can't afford not to be. Check in and see, do you actually love your partner, and are you creating financial distress in order to make sure that they never leave you because you're actually really afraid to be alone? Oh, yeah, that happens. And if you are really afraid to be alone, do you actually want to be with the person that you're living with? Or would you like to be with somebody else, but haven't had the guts to actually step into that? Yeah. So, or would you like to just be with yourself? Maybe you would just like to leave and be on your own. So what have you made the center of your relationship? It's really good to know, because if you have created the chaos of we are staying together for the kids. Okay, let's take that one because lots of people use that as an excuse too. We're staying together for the kids. Well, if my parents had stayed together for the kids, I've actually tapped into that energetic timeline on several occasions just to see what would that feel like and look like. If you're wondering, like, how do you tap into another timeline? Well, I can't guarantee you that it's correct, but I have a certain sense that I can feel like what that would feel like. And if you'd like to know how, if you'd like to experience it, just connect with me through milicajelenic.com and see what it would feel like if you were in this other experience of a different timeline. If my parents had stayed together, there would have been at least one suicide in our family. Would have been either me, my mother, or my brother would have probably committed suicide. And the chances are it probably would have been me. So I'm really glad they got divorced when I was 4. It was like one of the greatest gifts of the universe that is a possibility. So if you're in a relationship that doesn't work, absolutely doesn't work, and the center of the relationship is off kilter and there is no center to the relationship, it will actually, because it's off kilter, it's going to create divorce. So if you know and can come back to what are the things you have, what are your commonalities, what are your common beliefs, what are your common morals, those are going to keep you steady. They're going to steer that ship in the direction that's going to help you forever stay on track. I think my my husband and I have I would say pretty much identical morals and values. And it's like we might have a slight argument once in a blue moon, but not even really. And I know some people say it's healthy to fight. I'm like, well, when I was fighting with somebody all the time, it was really unhealthy. It was actually highly destructive. There was never resolution. It didn't work. It was abusive. And so having like peace and ease and having somebody who has similar beliefs and morals and moral compass as you is such a relief and can create so much ease. And it's not like we ever sat down necessarily and wrote out what our beliefs and morals are, but you can see it in a person and you can see their reaction to certain situations, whether it's political situations or whether it's, even just having conversations about things about, well, there's that scenario. What do you think of that? And, when both of you end up having very similar feelings on different scenarios, then the chances are you have very similar morals and values. And it's very easy to bring your relationship back to those similar morals and values. We weren't raised in the same religious, like my husband, we were both raised as Christians, but that doesn't mean that we're practicing Christians. So he was raised as Catholic and I was raised more like Orthodox and Presbyterian. I had variety going on and had one side pulling me to the Presbyterians and one side pulling me to the Orthodox. And what I found in the long run was the only difference is the way that you actually, when you attend church, where you stand or where you sit. In the Orthodox, we stood, women on one side, men on the other. In the Presbyterians, you sat in pews with your family. That was essentially the only difference. The singing and the stories and everything else was the same. So it's funny though, we got to have all these different churches who have slight variations on things and more celebrations in the Orthodox Church for sure. But those morals and values that you have, I think they're innate because I did not take my child to church on like every Sunday basis. I didn't hardly ever actually take my child to church. So the morals and values that my child have are, I think, innate to who they are. And when you let somebody just show you who they are and what they believe in, I think people are innately going to be good people given the option, given the choice, and given the space and the right and the environment, not the right environment, but the environment to be allowed to have their own morals and values. I think people are innately good and they're, trained and stuff into being more unkind. So yeah, so again, we're going to bring it back to the center of the relationship with my child, for example, is love. And what is, if I'm doing something that is not from a place of love, it probably reads real loud and clear like a blazing fire. Like, whoa, that wasn't love. And it's like, okay, whoa, back up, find the love. Where's the love? Center on the love. And it doesn't mean that it's my love. I have love, but the love is bigger. Like I can't even really quite explain what happens with love of a child. It's like child is born and you're like, wow, I never felt such a big love in my life. Or this like outpouring that just comes like through you to them like constantly. And then all of a sudden it grows and you're like, and then it grows and then it grows. And you're like, how is it even possible that it can be as big as it is? How can love be this big? Like it's kind of astounding. How can this energy that encompasses what we might term love, how can it be that big? So it's got that infinite feeling to it, that infinite, what people might call like divine energy moving through. So it comes back to that love. Is it loving? Is it kind? Is it joyful? Does it bring joy to the world? whatever it is that you're doing or being. So I think you can really, really simplify. It doesn't mean that you have to believe in a certain belief system, or you have to, um, focus all of your time and energy on addictions, like even work as an addiction, or addictions like uh, overcompensating and trying to be the best possible person ever. Um, we're all flawed. So if you're trying to be the best person ever, just try and be the best version of you ever, because the competition is fierce out there. There are a lot of good people in the world. So to try and be the best person ever will be totally exhausting and become like almost like an addiction to being better and better and better and better and better. And then you're going to try every self-help program that ever existed. And then you're still going to think you're not the best of the best of the best. And so you're going to keep going and you're going to feel like crap. And there's no joy in that. So being the best version of you with what is at the center of your universe and bringing yourself back to that repeatedly. What is the center of my universe? What is it that I'm doing everything for? Is it for your family? Is it for divine? Is it for the betterment of humanity? Is it for nothingness? Like whatever it happens to be. And if you're devoted to nothingness and it's working for you, cool. Rock that. As long as it's working for you. If you're finding that you're depressed all the time and that you're, feeling alone or isolated, or then maybe it's time to shift the center. What is now going to be your center? Because you can shift them, especially if your center has been off center for a really long time. Sometimes you got to find your new center and get back on track. And we all fall off the track sometimes. So we're going to head to our next commercial break. You're listening to The Pleasure Zone here on Inspired Choices Network, and we'll be right back after this commercial.
Are you secretly a voyeur, wondering what's going on in other people's sex lives? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual evolution? Are you interested in people who are pioneers of different sexual and pleasurable practices? Lean in now with Milica Jelenic, where she will entice you and your body to know your own pleasure zone. On the Pleasure Zone radio show with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life, and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for the Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. This is the Pleasure Zone with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic. To participate in the program today, join our live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email. info@MilicaJelenic.com. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back, my sweet pleasure seekers. Today we're talking about what is at the center of your relationship. So, start with what is at the center of your relationship to yourself, and who or what is at that center. Is it yourself? Is it your family? Is it is the center of your relationship to yourself actually not based? Is it based on something external or internal? Is it, the center of your relationship to yourself could be that you have self-loathing. And so the center of your relationship to yourself is based on things you've heard from people your whole life about, you're this and you're that and you're no good and you blah, 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 and like the nastiness, the bullying comes out, right? So, and then you start bullying yourself and you think you're a terrible, awful, wrong, bad person. Well, if you're going to constantly do that, it's going to be really hard for you to find any light or ease or faith or happiness. It's just going to be really hard. So it's not impossible, but it is hard. So the center of your relationship to yourself, if you start to switch it to, what could actually bring me joy? What is it that, and if you have no idea and you need assistance discovering that, you can always connect with me. I offer 30 minutes of discovery session. You can find that on my website, doing a connection call with me, and we can definitely look at what is the center of the relationship that you have with yourself. What have you centered your relationship to yourself on? And then, extending that to others. And it might be different, like your relationship to other people might be like to your children might be different than to your spouse, that might be different to somebody else. But you know what? You can actually have the center of all those relationships be pretty much the same. It can be like love and joy and all those things. And depending on how you perceive those, yeah, it can be quite an experience just to evaluate what that center is. And I want to bring up, because we are listening to the pleasure zone, right, guys? Like if the center of your relationship is sex, I just want to say that's actually not sustainable. I know that's weird coming from me, but hear me out. If the center of your relationship is sex, then if your partner has any kind of health issues or aging, they might have some issues with whether it's getting stimulated or being able to have sex, whether it's like the wetness factor or the erection factor, or any of that, or there might be like hidden traumas in the body that haven't been resolved. So that all comes up. Then if sex is at the center of your relationship and you can't have sex, your relationship will die. But if you center your relationship on something bigger than that, so love is bigger than sex for sure. And if you center it on love that is not just of the person, because love of that person can change too. There'll be times where you might be mad at them. But if you can see the light in them, and there's I might bastardize this a bit, but there's a saying in yoga you probably heard like after a yoga class, people say namaste. And one of the translations of that is that the light in me sees the light in you. And so if you can see the light in your partner or your friends or anybody else, you can center your relationship around the light that you see in them. And then that grows. And then that grows for you and it grows for them. It's a really simple concept, I know, but that light is consistent across the entire planet, that light exists in all cultures. It's named different things to everybody. But if you can see that light in somebody, you can have that be part of the sustaining factor. So if, the sex is not something you're able to have, and we've talked about lots of options too around if you can't have penetrative sex, if the oral sex isn't working, what else can you do for intimacy? Lots of options as well. And those things are all really important factors, especially if your love language is touch. So I'm not negating that, but I'm also saying that that if that isn't possible, what else can you use to help you to have your relationship last so that both partners feel at ease? Nobody feels like they're being neglected, right? So neglect is a form of abuse, and that's not a good center of a relationship either. So we want to bring it out of neglect, out of any of those things, and focus on the light that you see in them and the light that you see in you, and connect those lights. Those lights are connected. Essentially, they are from the same source. So, whether you're going with the scientific, we are all stars, or you're going with the spiritual, we are all from God's source, it doesn't really matter. It's all knowing that it's all from the same source, right? And so the light in me sees the light in you. And if you can let that energy just be pervasive and use that as part of your centering, can be really helpful. And then when you do look at people, a lot of the anger will just go. It just kind of melts. And the frustrations can melt, unless it's been like chronic constant abuse, but that's a whole other kind of conversation to be had. And there are people who don't want to heal and they don't want to shift that. And then when you know that that's part of the case, you can always end relationships too. But knowing that there can be something that is a gravitational force that brings you together, that is the center of your relationship, that can be sustainable. Just wonder for yourself, like, what is that for me? And what can I do with that? And then connect with me if you need to.
Thank you for listening to The Pleasure Zone with sensual movement artist Milica Jelenic. The Pleasure Zone returns next Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Mountain, and 5 p.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. We hope you'll join us. Until then, have the best week of your life by choosing to be turned on and tuned in to your body.